What is the dumbest reason you got injured as a child? It was on my big sister's birthday party. I think I was 3 years old or so. I jumped off my loft bed thinking I could fly. I was so stupid that I even shout, "I can fly," to all of the people on the party and waited until they looked at me, then gave myself over to gravity with my arms open and a smile on my face. I landed on a Lego box with my back. The box was shaped like a big Lego brick. My whole back was torn open, but I never stopped thinking that maybe I can't fly after all. Dude, having a son, I have to repeatedly tell him after watching superhero movies that he cannot and will never be able to fly, so don't try it. We have a loft in the house that is about 12 to 15 feet up. And while it's a solid wall railing, he could definitely try to fly off of it with the help of a chair or something. As the now-grown version of that kid, please also make sure to tell him that homemade parachutes will never work and that broken tailbones hurt. A friend of mine sprayed Axe body spray up their butt. Chased my sister with like 50 knives in my hands when I was 8. Fell and stabbed myself through the wrist. They tell you not to run with scissors, but nobody ever mentions that you shouldn't run with 15 knives. I blame public education. They must have lost funding after teaching you not to run with 1 to 14 knives. In elementary school, my friend was sticking paper clips in electrical outlets. I told him he needs to stick the paper clip in both holes to complete the circuit. He was shocked when he discovered it worked. I read shocked more like, "Oh my goodness, it worked." And then I realized that you probably meant electrical shock. I threw a rock up in the air. It hit me in the face. I learned to respect gravity that day. I thought I could jump off a bunk bed and do a somersault before landing on my feet on the floor. Broke my tibia and fibula getting my foot caught in the side on the bed. Anytime my father said, "You'll be fine. It's safe." Quote, asterisk exhibit an asterisk. My father and I were jumping between tubes pulled behind a speedboat. His idea and urging, not mine. We guess we were probably going 40-ish mph at the time. But he jumped before I did, which pushed the tubes apart. Hitting the water as hard as I did broke my left radius and taught me what a skipped stone feels like. But he insisted it wasn't broken for 3 days before he caved and let me get it x-rayed. Asterisk exhibit B asterisk. I had a machete for cutting down weeds, but it needed sharpening, so I got the grinder and started sharpening it. My father walks into the garage and says no, you have to do it manually, and gets out a file and begins sharpening it with the blade facing. Hi monsieur, I think that's a stupid idea. So when he hands it to me, I flip it around and sharpen away from myself. He leaves and comes back a few minutes later, and tells me I need to sharpen with the blade toward me. I disagree, saying it's not safe. He insists, so I do it his way. Within 30 seconds, I've nicked something important in my thumb and I've discovered my blood pressure is high enough to squirt blood across the garage and paint the far wall. Asterisk exhibit C asterisk. We were cleaning up around the shed and replacing some old wooden beams where there were a lot of rusty nails. I suggest dealing with them first and pounding them down so we don't hit one. He insists that'd just be a waste of time. I shrug and go along with his suggestion. 10 minutes in, I've been bent over for a while, so I stand up to stretch, and I stand up into a rusty nail, which drives about half an inch into my neck, missing the important bits. Thankfully none of them came with permanent damage, but I no longer trust his definition of safe. Did your father ever sustain similar injuries doing things he defined as safe? Or were you his test subject to decide what was safe or not? He did sustain a lot of self-inflicted wounds, but I seem to get the more dramatic ones. It's not your blood pressure that caused your blood to cross your garage. It was an artery. Arteries are the blood vessels where blood travels away from the heart. So the blood is under a lot of pressure. When you cut an artery, blood comes out at that pressure. I was told at a first aid course that it's not uncommon to see blood stains on ceilings because of this fact. Blood from cut arteries can cross 30 feet, or 10 meters. Second of all, arteries are harder to cut because they're deeper in the body. The blood vessels you see on your wrists and inside your elbows are veins, which are under low pressure. Arteries are underneath the skin, whereas veins are close to the surface. Dude, how did you cut an artery? When I took my first steps, I didn't know how to stop and kept going faster to avoid falling. I ended up running face first into a cabinet and didn't attempt to walk again for months. How do you remember that? That's more than likely a story he's heard told a lot. Yeah, my memory is good, but not 17 years ago good, haha. Stuck my finger in a pencil sharpener because I wanted sharper nails. The whole nail was ripped from my finger. I guess you found out from the young age that you weren't very sharp. I grimaced at that. At PE, teacher has set up a big inflatable mattress you could bounce on. So kid me waiting my turn is playing with a baseball bat and get the bright idea to hit the mattress side. It was so bouncy the bat of course recoiled and hit me in the head. After that I was always more aggressive. Decided to jump off the trailer roof to see if it would break my legs. Well, did it? Well, not the bones, but I have hyperextended and unstable joints and it did basically rip my knees from the sockets and undo a couple years worth of physio strength building lol. Wow, I felt this comment in my asshole. Was this meant for the axe comment? No, the word picture about your knees made my asshole pucker. I dented my iPhone. Thought I could wedge a butter knife in the dent. And undent it. I sliced my finger open instead. In France, with a room service butter knife I stole. It was a school trip. I lost conscious in the shower the next morning, and made us late leaving the hotel. School had horse riding as a subject. Rode one directly into a tree. Only a broken arm, monsieur. You rode a horse with an arm. My brother shut my thumb in the car door and my mom started to drive away. I was running and screaming enough that she finally stopped. Your mom drove off without you, and with your finger in the car. Yup. She didn't realize until she heard me screaming. A drunk friend of mine wanted to do that thing where your shirt gets caught in a car door and when the car takes off it rips the shirt off. The first 2 times the shirt just pulled out of the weather strip. On the last attempt he slammed the front of the shirt right in the latch. The driver gets the go-ahead and punches it hard enough to make the tires bark. The dude is instantly off his feet. Shirt bunched into basically a rope under his armpits. The driver can't see him because he's on the ground and drives like 200 feet while this barefoot moron tries desperately to avoid getting under the rear wheel which is inches from his face as his legs are getting pavement sanded. The driver finally notices everyone freaking out behind. Hi monsieur, the guy lost all the skin on his knees and the tops of his feet. The retard was wearing sandals of all things. The driver was a moron too. He went to jail for something unrelated like 2 years after that. Fun times. I guess I wasn't the smartest kid, and I've been told I was quite a handful. So I'm running around the house one day playing and I run straight into the middle of a wall. Full force. I'm a screaming mess. I got blood running down my face and my parents are freaking the fuck out. Only child here, so my parents rush me to nearest hospital and demand the best doctor. They want to make sure I have the least amount of scaring. From what I've been told, it was not a walk in the park giving stitches to a 4-year-old. The next day I'm running around the house again and my dumbass runs right into the same spot on the same fucking wall. My parents are over it at this point. They slap a couple butterfly band-aids on it like the pair of pros they are, and call it a day. Still got the scar on my forehead 26 years later. My favorite part of this is the only child disclaimer attached to your parents' concern. Hey dude, look how far I can bend my pinky, crack. I thought the blankets draping off my mom's bed would be an epic slide. Broke my foot. I also had to go to the ER because I lodged a raisin into my sinus cavity and ran in heels in. Sprained the fuck out of my ankle. There's a trick where you plug the kid's mouth and blow in the other nostril and whatever's stuck will pop right out. Or maybe it's plug the other nostril and blow in the mouth. Can't remember. I've seen videos of people doing it to get little toys or raisins or whatever unstuck. I would ride my bike everywhere with no hands as a 12 years old. At 12 the Numa Numa vid was very popular. I rode up in front of my friends on the way to school to combine the no hands bike ride and the Numa Numa dance. Result: ass over tea kettle and road rash. My dad told me to stop running and jumping into one of those inflatable kiddie pools because I'd slip and hurt myself. I made eye contact with him while I did it again to prove it was perfectly safe. He had the class not to say I told you so when I spiral fractured my leg approximately 14 seconds later. My dad was working on the hot water heater in the house. The safety flipped and steaming hot water started pouring out of the emergency valve. 5-year-old me thought it'd be a phenomenal idea to stick my foot under the water. Some second-degree burns later, I found out it wasn't actually a phenomenal idea. Jumped off the garage with an umbrella like Bugs Bunny. Also tried, but Mary Poppins was my inspiration. Snapped my arm getting something out of the couch cushion. First instance of my legendary pain threshold intolerance on display. Because my mom just heard a snap and saw a befuddled 2-year-old wondering why their arm just turned into the letter Z. Pow. I assume I posted on my arm with all my body weight while simultaneously twisting. No one knows for sure because no one saw me do it. They were setting the table for dinner for just had a snap from like 10 feet away in the living room and saw me looking at my obviously twisted and deformed arm. Monsieur. I turned around too fast, knocked myself out cold on a coat peg. The Knife Song. 9 years old, standing up swinging on a baby swing while holding onto the crossbar. Jumped off backwards and broke my right elbow. 5 weeks into my 6-week cast I fell down the stairs and broke it again. It now over straightens and doesn't bend completely. 11 years old, turned up the heating for my nan and caught my right knee on the arm of her sofa, dislocating it. My kneecap was stuck on the side of my leg for in excess of an hour before the paramedics finally decided to pop it back into place. That shit hurt. Many more incidents. I was and still am an incredibly clumsy person. Edit. Added kneecap for clarity. I used to take anything vaguely sword-shaped, climb on something high, for a 4-year-old, and say, by the power of Grey Skull, I have the power, and then apparently jump off in the direction of something hard. I'm not sure though because the next thing I knew, I was in the emergency room. Monsieur, this happened 2 or 3 times. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.